All right, everyone, welcome to our class. This is the next EAN class in a series throughout 2014. The class is, the series for these classes is kind of determined by what is happening out there in the skies and whatever attracts me as some subject matter. And so tonight's class, which is being recorded January 20th of 2014, tonight's class is the Archetype of Lucifer. This is a class which is pretty unique to the principles of evolutionary astrology. It's not practiced much in general astrology, although asteroids are coming more and more into the picture. Stay tuned, I'll say some more about that. But as we do with any of our classes, we move through our housekeeping slides right at first. So I thank you very much for bearing with us through these next couple of slides before we get started with our material. First of all, in or at the Evolutionary Astrology Network, we have 4 types of students. You can learn at your own pace. We have the free student, which is our free weekly audio podcast that Leroy and I do as Media Monk and Star Lady. You can always find them on our home page from the forecasting menu. Just click down and it'll take you directly to our podcast. Of course, we also have our astral library with 3 different subjects of material. I'll talk about that the next slide. And then you can become a registered student with either just purchasing materials or continuing on to do homework and becoming certified as an evolutionary astrologer. Now, our astral library, this was the genesis of our new website, approaching 1 year old. We took our dozen years of archived materials and put it into 3 different sections. Section 1, the archetypes. Section 2, understanding the evolutionary astrology method of chart interpretation. And Section 3, the kind of catch-all for everything else. You can see from your screen that you can subscribe to these for 1 month. You can subscribe 1 month recurring. You can subscribe for 6 months or 12 months. And if you want more details on that pricing, you can just go to our Evolutionary Astrology website. And on the home page, there is a menu that you can drop down that says Astral Library in it. You can even research all of the different authors and titles we have so you can see exactly what's in each section before you look at it. Many of you might be familiar with the fact that we have a multimedia course. You can see the 3 different segments right there. You can see that you get DVDs, you can get the JWebG transcript, you get access to monthly classes on segment 1 and segment 2. We're in process of expanding the students area of the website right now, and we're taking those DVDs and they're going to become streaming videos right in those sections with all the support materials as PDF and documents so that you can then study from any of your small portable devices as we are watching that world change month by month, year by year. Just one little detail for you. Starting this month, I have started separate monthly classes for both segment 1 and segment 2 via webinar. You can still get in on those classes if you are interested. We had our segment 1 class last week, and our first segment 2 class is is Wednesday afternoon, 2 days from now. So you're more than welcome to get in on these classes live or catch up with them as archived videos. And so, as we start in on the archetype of Lucifer, I want to start with this concept of what is the soul. I think many of us are going to be familiar with it if you're showing up on these types of classes, but just in case you need a little refresher. The soul is that immutable consciousness that exists from life to life. Immutable meaning that it is not something that can be destroyed. It evolves in consciousness through lifetimes of incarnation. This is the process that we're in this current incarnation, and all of our different lessons we are learning along the way. And one of the things that we learn through evolutionary astrology, observation correlation, is that different souls exist at different levels of conscious awareness. In EA, this is known as evolutionary states. These states are consensus, individuated, and spirituated in the majority of souls on planet Earth. And of course, I put in a dictionary definition of the word soul. The spiritual part of a person that is believed to give life to the body, and in many religions is believed to live forever. Now, one of the things that we've observed in evolutionary astrology is that the soul is known to have a dual desire nature. And you can just reflect upon this yourself, in your own world, in your own life. First of all, we all have a desire to separate from that which created us, or the desire to incarnate into a physical body and know ourselves as this apparent separate existence. And when we separate and incarnate into this body, we all have desires. We have a desire of anything, everything. For example, on the screen, a new job, a new lover, a new house, new clothes, etc., etc. I just had a text message from one of my friends who had been out of work and unemployment, and she just got a job today, and she was so excited. Call me, call me, call me. I think I finally got my ideal job. So we all have that desire nature, and many of us go through countless lifetimes having a desire, achieving it, momentary sense of satisfaction followed by dissatisfaction. And we either replace that dissatisfaction with a new desire, or eventually, as we exhaust those separating desires, we come to our second desire category, which is the desire to return to that which created us, or the desire to know source energy, i.e., God, Goddess, Great Spirit, whatever your terminology is. And so this dual desire nature to separate and return exists within all of us. And again, we all go through countless lifetimes exhausting this separating desire nature. Now, to follow through on this separating desire, I want to talk about the subject that we would know as the separating forces, or in biblical terms, the nature of evil. First of all, the separating forces came into manifestation at the moment the unmanifest manifested everything into creation. In other words, that Big Bang 14 million years ago created the law of polarity, or separating forces and returning forces, more commonly known as light and dark, or again, good and evil, in what we would know as religious terms. Again, that energy of evil or separating forces came into being at the same moment creation was manifested. This observation in itself implies that Source itself is not perfect, because all we have to do is ask the simple question, why would something perfect create imperfection? One of the great distortions in religious teachings is somehow implying that Source energy, God, is perfect. Well, why would it create this mess if it was? So universal Source, evolving force, God, Goddess, again, whatever your language is, universal Source is the source of evil or separating forces. Now, the intent of the separating forces is maintaining that human illusion of what we call reality. Just look at yourself. You're probably sitting at a desk or sitting on your couch getting comfy. You're surrounded by a glass of water. You have your little creature comforts. It's real. You can touch it. You can pinch this body and it hurts. The separating forces maintain this illusion of what we know here as reality. The separating forces want to keep all souls and all creation separate from universal source. In other words, the separating forces want to prevent us from reuniting with source energy. Now, the main way that evil or these separating forces maintain this illusion is they are intent on creating the opposite reality of whatever we intend. And as they maintain that separate reality, it leads to a sense of defeatism or futility, or what difference does it make? One of the most simplest examples that I like to use with this is in our westernized world, especially this time of year, the beginning of the year, January. How many of us make those New Year's resolutions? I want to exercise more. I want to release weight. I want to start studying. I am going to discipline myself to write. I am going to create a better relationship with a family member. I am blah, blah, blah. And how many times, for instance, in this desire to release weight, how many times do we start on an exercise and diet or lifestyle change plan and we make it so far, and then poof, all of a sudden we find that instead of releasing, we put on an extra 2 pounds or 5 pounds or whatever. You can just see from that simple example that separating forces with whatever we intend will want to create that opposite reality because it keeps us feeling weak, powerless. And what it takes to counteract that, and we'll talk about this in just a little bit, is a very, very strong sense of self-determination, of willpower to basically keep trying. Doesn't matter how many times you fall down. What matters more is that you try one more time. One more time, again and again and again, until you get where you want to go. Now, something else to understand about separating forces is because they came into manifestation at the Big Bang, separating forces will exist to some degree until Source itself perfects and manifested creation ceases to exist. Now, all souls, no matter what their evolutionary state or degree of conscious awareness is, all souls are susceptible to the influence of source energy, which is that returning force and that returning desire within us. And we're also susceptible to the influence of the separating forces or desires that are known as evil. We're all susceptible to separating and returning forces, separating and returning desires. Separating forces want to always undermine the area of any soul's weakest link. And it is usually the weakest emotional link. And we don't even need astrology for this. All we need to do is just look. What do you feel are your most vulnerable areas in your world, in your life? What are your weakest links? Is it fear? Is it narcissism? Is it abandonment? Is it workaholism? You can think of any type of area where you may feel yourself out of balance. And so when that weak link gets activated, especially activated on emotional levels, separating forces will come in and energize it, and they will attempt to magnify it. And because it's ourself, it's our own energy, we really think that it is us. Well, it is. It is our fear. It is our egotism. But it's more than just us. Again, it's the separating forces, undermining whatever we are intending. And for many of us, by the time we show up for this type of class with evolutionary astrology, one of the things that we want in our world is a spiritualization process. We want to individualize, and yet we want to spiritualize. We want to know source energy. And so if we set about to create a spiritual practice in our life, here again, separating forces can come in and make the effort to undermine whatever that spiritual practice is. Now, the energy of evil is almost completely unseen, unnoticed. And again, it is just from the slide before. The separating forces will always take our weak link and exploit it. And so we don't think, oh, that's evil out there trying to influence me. We see it as our own weakness that is then exploited, expanded upon. When we move into the principles of astrology and work with them, again, one of the very basics of evolutionary astrology is that it is a knowledge-based system. And it is understood through observation and correlation. We observe it and we correlate a meaning to it. And so, the dual forces in the universe, separating and returning forces, they are found in the archetype, Scorpio, 8th house, and Pluto. We also, though, find in observation, correlation in the universe, that the asteroid Lucifer comes into play as also specifically reflecting this dual nature force separating and returning in the universe. And so we can actually look to the asteroid Lucifer in the chart to see a reflection of where these influences of separating and returning forces are actually happening in our own soul. Now, Lucifer, as an asteroid, as an archetype in evolutionary astrology, representing these dual forces in the universe, will show where this exists within each of our souls. And referring back again to these religious terms, separating forces as the Lucifer archetype has been known in history as the fallen angel, the angel that left God and became influenced by evil. However, this archetype of Lucifer will also show the returning forces as well, or what we would know as the bearer of light. So the very symbol that shows where we have our weakest link, where we have the most susceptibility to being influenced by evil, that very same archetype in our chart shows us where we turn the light on, shows us where we can find another path back to source energy. So we'll work into these examples of how Lucifer shows where we can be stuck, where we have our weakest emotional link, and where we bought into the delusion of separation from source. But working with, again, that polarity of astrology, will also show how to turn that weak link into the light. Now, before I move on, do I have any questions from anybody? If you do, you can, if you look at your little menu panel that shows up on your screen, you'll see that there's an orange arrow and it has several icons below it. One of your icons is going to be the hand with 5 fingers. If you click on that, that means you want to speak. We can unmute you. You can ask a question directly. You will also see that if you click on that orange arrow and expand your menu button, there is a question and answer pane where you can type questions in. For the most part, I do find that this is not a hard archetype to understand. It's the light and the dark. And many of us, as we've come through our metaphysical studies, recognize that there's a lot of new age concepts out there that, you know, love and light, love and light, love and light, love and light. And what we observe in the world of evolutionary astrology is show me the truth. Now, how do you know the light unless you see the dark? The law of polarity is a pretty natural law that we all observe. Daylight, nighttime, male, female, energy outward, energy inward, energy separating, energy returning. And so it's not that we ignore the dark or the shadow or the separating forces or evil. It's the ability to be aware of it and detach from it and observe it and say, I choose the light.
Kim?
Now, yes?
I just wanted to chime in here and tell you that I have a couple of poll questions, and you can just tell me when you need a little water break, and I can certainly help in that way whenever you're ready.
Sure. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I'm going to take a little water break at the moment. And so, you know, I remember when Jeffrey Green first started lecturing on this. It was in the year 2000, the last of the Astro 2000 conferences that he and Noel Till did back in Denver. And when he started lecturing on it, you know, it led to lots of questions with students. It led to a lot of even polarizations. And I thought about putting a slide in on this. And I just didn't, but I thought, okay, I will mention it. Because this, you know, there is this concept within the New Age world, again, of just love and light, love and light. Yes, that's what we want to energize. But to ignore the shadow is not being real. It's just being naive. And all we have to do is look at somebody who has achieved some, well, in EA, the example is second stage spirituated, where they have achieved some greatness, and they think that the ego gets involved with thinking that it is source energy, and it suffers that fall from grace. And the ego is that separation buying into I'm as good as God. And the fall from grace is the returning forces bringing the awareness of where they have fallen for that illusion of separation, where they have fallen for the egotism of their individual soul. And the soul needs to realign with universal soul. Another concept, though, that Jeffrey Green had brought in and taught, and I guess I didn't put a slide on it because I don't know where my opinion is, was the most controversial part of his teachings about the nature of evil, and that is that there are some souls who will go through such a strong influence by the separating forces, and the weaker we are, the stronger the susceptibility to the separating forces. And sometimes souls can fall into making what they would call the contract with evil in order to have more power. Instead of being weak, to have more power, to have supernatural powers. And according to Jeffrey's observations, if a soul makes that contract with evil, it cannot be broken. His reasoning is, if we could make that contract with evil to have supernatural power and then just break it off, who of us at some point in our many lifetimes wouldn't want it? Who of us wouldn't want to be more powerful? And so I just share the information. I feel that there's some truth to it. I don't know if I agree with it 100%. And in many areas of the second and third generation of evolutionary astrologers, there are those who get, pretty diametrically opposed on this. I prefer to say I don't know yet, and I'm still entertaining the idea, so that is why I just want to bring it up for you. And as for the being strongly influenced by evil, again, the weaker we are, the more we can fall in that spiral of just being defeated and feeling futile, feeling depressed, and we can be susceptible to those influences by the separating forces, thinking it's our own stuff. And again, one of the ways that we really work our way through it is, I want to know God. I want to know Source. Show me the light. I see you, evil, and I choose the light. It's kind of the personal mantra that I've taken over. I see you, and I choose the light. I notice you, I sense you, I choose the light. I choose source energy. So Medium Monk, I am going to, oh, I did put this on a slideshow. Let me go through this. I was talking about this a little bit, but Lucifer as the bearer of light is really about expanding in consciousness. And that expansion in consciousness, if you remember, from EA's perspective, is the soul exhausting the separating desires. And from the perspective of evolutionary astrology, we don't exhaust those desires in the monastery or the convent. If we could, again, pray ourselves perfect, all of us would. We'd get our instant nirvana. It goes through the exhaustion of the separating desire. It goes through getting the job, the lover, the child, the possessions, the power, the whatever, and still being dissatisfied and still saying, what else? And so eventually that desire to know source energy becomes stronger and stronger, and that's the process of expanding consciousness, expanding awareness. And when we have those weak links that get influenced by separating forces, and we feel defeatism and futility and depression, what's necessary is self-determination, willpower, trying again and again and again and again until we're successful, no matter how many times it takes us. And of course, as I just told you, I see you, I sense you, and I choose the light. Now, one of the teachings that comes through EA from Jeffrey is an Eastern teaching called the Agni fire ritual. Agni is the word fire in Sanskrit. And that ritual is to either create a fire, whether it is a fireplace or a fire pit, or it is as simple as choosing to light a candle. And if you have someone who, when we are in the presence of the separating forces or evil, usually we will have a physiological response to it. We get the creeps. Something tells us something isn't right. This is where as we're returning to trusting our instinct, trusting the emotions, and trusting the emotional guidance system, we call it gut. As we return to that, we don't have to know it, we just have to sense it, and we want to remove ourselves. But if we have had encounters with those who have been influenced by the separating forces in some degree or another, the Agni fire ritual is staring into the fire flame and bringing up the person, the energy, whatever, and just staring into the fire and energizing it to be smashed into gazillion pieces and returned to the light. And at the same time, choosing to forgive. I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you. And what happens as we say that, I forgive you? If any of you are familiar with Ho'oponopono prayer, the Hawaiian forgiveness prayer, this is a little bit of that energy. I'll explain that because I brought it up too. But what it is it's accepting our self-responsibility for drawing the situation to us. And it is, again, gazing into the flame, into that fire, and bringing up the energy or the vision and giving it to the light as many times as necessary until you can't energize it anymore. And I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you. Until that you feel that energy dissipate. And you may have to do it once, and do it again, 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 and do it again. And it may be something that you might do from one degree or another throughout a lifetime, throughout multiple lifetimes. Because again, separating forces came into existence at the Big Bang, and they will be in existence to some degree until manifested creation has perfected itself. Now, because I mentioned it, that Hawaiian forgiveness prayer is 4 steps. Anyway, I've simplified them to 4 steps. Whenever anything is in our life that we do not want, do not like, causes pain, hurt, we just would like to grow beyond it, evolve through it. There's 4 steps to the Hawaiian forgiveness prayer called Ho'oponopono. Step 1 is, I love you. And if that's too hard to say, I care about you. I care about you as a human being. I care about you as an energy in the universe. Step 2 is, I am sorry for XYZ. And XYZ can be whatever energy, whatever detail, whatever experience, whatever trauma, whatever it is. I forgive you is step 3. Please forgive me is step 4. And again, Ho'oponopono comes from the premise that if it's in our world, we've had some role in co-creating it. We've had some role in magnetizing it in. Doing that Hawaiian forgiveness prayer, I love you, I am sorry for XYZ, please forgive me, I forgive you. And adding it on to the Agni fire ritual, between the two of them, these are some very powerful tools for dissipating the separating forces, the separating energies in your life and their influences, and moving yourselves towards the light. Now, something else popped in that I have that I created for myself. I don't know how long. 15 years ago, I think. I created a little prayer for myself, and it's something that I have a tendency to say before any class like this, before I teach, before I read, and it goes something like this: Spirit of God, Goddess, come through me. And I'll repeat it. Or maybe I'll try and put a slide. Spirit of God, Goddess, come through me. Mind of God, Goddess, speak through me. Mind of God, Goddess, speak through me. Heart of God, Goddess, love through me. Heart of God, Goddess, love through me. Body of God, Goddess, I am. Body of God, Goddess, I am. And it's just my mantra of just really invoking, as you can just recognize from it, source energy to come through and to be the guiding factor in my astrological teachings and readings and work. So that's another one that you can choose. Sometimes I just simplify it to just spirit, come through me. And I just energize all 4 lines that I just shared with you. Alright, so at this point I'll entertain any questions before I move on. And Leroy, if you'd like to do a poll question, I'm fine with that.
All right, let's do it. Let's have fun with a poll. This is kind of interesting. How many asteroids, approximately, in an asteroid in this context would be what a body that's more than 1 kilometer in diameter are believed to be in that asteroid belt between the planet Mars and Jupiter. So for those of you participating, I'll just wait a few minutes and you can select your poll question, your poll answer, I should say, and then we'll kind of discuss it. How many asteroids are in the asteroid belt? Go ahead, Kim.
Going to say, because I'm the speaker, I don't see the poll question. So what are their choices?
Oh, select one of the following. Are there 50,000 approximately, 200,000, 750,000, or over 1 million asteroids in that asteroid belt, basically wider, the circumference being larger than a kilometer, which is about 3/5 of a mile. How many are they? How many are there? Half of you voted so far. And of course, we've had one major asteroid has become a dwarf planet, and so we'll talk about that maybe in the second poll. But how many are there in the asteroid belt? So I'm going to close the poll. And share the results. Over 1 million. Actually, the answer, nobody selected it, was 750,000 asteroids larger than 3/5 of a mile in diameter. Now, there are millions of smaller ones. Indeed, there are nearly 200 or 300 that are larger than 60 miles in diameter in that asteroid belt. So a little bit of a trick question. And so 4 out of 5 people can really say that they're right. And because there are a lot of very smaller asteroids in that planet, or in that asteroid belt. Kind of an interesting study along these lines.
Well, Media Monk, as you enable my screen again, I got a little tidbit with that one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll go ahead and mute myself and let you go back into presentation mode, Kim. Thank you for participating, everybody.
All right. I kind of know where Leroy was getting that question, because I have a couple of sources down here on this next screen on I'm going to move into look just a little bit on asteroids in general. And it's actually space.com. They have been able to identify and prove 750,000 asteroids in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. However, there's an estimation that there are between 1 and 2 million of those asteroids larger than 1 kilometer. So, yeah, if somebody got that answer, because I can't see your pulse and what you say, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger all the time. But here's my first comment. Asteroids exist in the entire solar system. And for instance, there's what's known as Trojan asteroids. Trojan asteroids are when they are piggybacking along the same path as one of the planets in a solar system. For instance, there are Trojan asteroids in the Jupiter cycles path, and there are those that exist before Jupiter, behind Jupiter, either side, and they just are in tandem with each other. Now, you know Mars takes 2 years to go around the Sun. You know Jupiter takes 12. That asteroid belt around the Sun, there's an average of 3 to 5.5 years that it takes the asteroids to go around the Sun, and therefore pretty much that's the revolution around planet Earth as well. This major asteroid belt that we know, they are leftovers from the formation of our own solar system. And of course, we know that our sun came into being about 4.5 billion years ago. And so did all of the planets. And so I thought this was an interesting thing to ponder on. Jupiter's gravity prevented the formation of another planet in between Mars and Jupiter. Kind of interesting to just ponder. Remember the tidbit from an earlier slide where I put up about 99% of the influence of evil is hidden, unknown. If many of us could just clearly see it and recognize it, we'd easily just turn it away. So it operates very incognito. And so think about the asteroid Lucifer existing out there, hiding out with a million other asteroids. And what's become popularized with this asteroid belt is their International Astronomy Society, or whoever they're called. I forget the initials and the name, but let's just say the astronomers who get to decide the names of everything. There are so many asteroids that they have opened it up to name asteroids after human names. They used to accept pet names, no more pet names. It has to be human names. And so, you know, that's become kind of a little buzz thing, for instance, to go look up the asteroid Kim and see where it falls in my chart, or the asteroid Leroy. And, you know, there are astrologers who give examples, say, for instance, with Prince William and Princess Catherine in the church or the country of England, or Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, and, you know, back when Brad was divorcing, what was her name? Jennifer Aniston. You know, you could go look up the asteroids, Brad, Angelina, and Jennifer, and they were all significant in those three people's charts. So they're there, and they do represent something, and by no means am I saying the asteroids are negative. They're all over the place. They're just another energy of consciousness that, as time goes by, we might put some meaning to. Maybe it was a place we all hung out a long time ago, and for whatever reasons, it just wasn't going to form into a planet. But it's an interesting concept to ponder. Now, the asteroid Lucifer, all of these asteroids also get a number. And Lucifer happens to be number 1930. And here's the ephemeris to go online to get it. Again, if you're just listening on an audio, you're not going to see it on the screen, but you get your PDF files afterwards for attending. you can come back to this particular slide, and Astro.com has their Swiss ephemeris, and you can go look up all kinds of asteroids there. And you'll just do a search on the number, and to do the search for Lucifer, it's number 1930. Now, Lucifer's cycle around the sun is approximately 5 years. And that is its cycle around the zodiac from our geocentric Earth perspective as well. During that 5-year cycle around the zodiac, Lucifer will make 4 retrograde cycles. And I will list these for you in the that are coming up over the next 5 years. Each time Lucifer goes retrograde from our Earth-centered geocentric perspective, it's retrograde between 3 and 3.5 months. Now, here's the current Lucifer cycle. It actually entered into Aries back on June 19th of 2013. It went retrograde August 5th at 6.5 degrees Aries. It re-entered back to Pisces September 20th. It went direct November 7th at 23 Pisces. Went back into Aries December 26th, just after Christmas last year. We're almost a month now with Lucifer back into Aries. And I'll show you the next slide on what it's going to do in Aries in activating this cardinal cross. But jumping ahead, you'll see that Lucifer will go back into Aries the next time in June of 2018. So you can see that that cycle is just a little less than 5 years. And we'll end up having another Lucifer retrograde in Aries Pisces. More on that later. You will have this PowerPoint slideshow to be able to refer to after class with the archived files. But here's what's interesting about Lucifer right now. It is another one of those archetypes or bodies in our solar system that is having an impact on the Grand Cross. I did the transit of the 4 planets in the Grand Cross for today at noon, and I like to use a 0-degree Aries when I'm working with people from all over with many different time zones, so it falls in the natural zodiac with the natural houses, simpler to look at and understand conceptually. And I have to make my own when I'm doing my PowerPoint shows. You see here's the archetype for Lucifer. It's a V with a line across it. You've seen it showing up on some of my slides. I don't have an ability to just naturally put it in there, although I think that Solar Fire software does that. But as of today, Lucifer was 7 degrees Aries, 15 minutes, and you can see that it's less than 2 degrees from Uranus. Remember Leroy and I getting up this morning, and I told you we didn't have any heat. Our furnace wasn't working. Luckily for us, we have an L-shaped ranch-style house, and the L was added on, and when they did, they put in a second furnace. So we weren't freezing too bad because that second furnace was still running in our sun's side of the house. However, it was chilly enough that I was like, the furnace isn't running. So Uranus rules electricity, Aries rules fire, warmth. We're like, oh, I was pondering this all day. So we got to figure out what we've got going on here. We've been having some electrical things happening in our house. And of course, in our composite chart between Leroy and I, our ascendant, our composite ascendant as a couple is 13 degrees Aries. And Uranus is going to go over it, and then retrograde. We'll have Uranus over our ascendant three times in 2014. And then this afternoon I was going, hey Leroy, heads up on all this electrical stuff. How are we going to deal with this? But the other thing that was happening is we didn't have any internet last night, and we didn't have any internet this morning. And we were trying a couple of different things on our own and trying not to get frustrated because I couldn't get online to, search out a couple more things or answer emails. And I'm like, oh, here's Lucifer trying to undermine us moving forward in teaching class tonight. Luckily for me, I had this PowerPoint slideshow done well enough that it would have been okay if the internet didn't come back up. But we did get the internet up and running about 3:30, 4 o'clock. However, here's how Lucifer is going to activate the Grand Cross. As we see it going over Uranus, which it's going to do in less than a week, what we can see when you're looking at Lucifer as the separating forces, you just look at the archetype, the sign in the house, as where it's distorted. All 12 archetypes have a distortion to them. They have a natural expression to them. What are the distortions of Aries? Failed initiations. We want to make those new beginnings, but we don't follow through. Another Aries distortion is extremes of selfishness and not being able to recognize that polarity, Libra, of fairness and equality. Uranus moving over, Lucifer moving over Uranus over the next week or two. We could see all kinds of upsets in the world with countries being selfish with each other or Uranus being sudden upsets. Uranus ruling all kinds of mental, electrical things, being in Aries actually ruling fire and things burning up. We could see all kinds of different various things that might happen in different areas of the world. You could look to see where Uranus and Lucifer fall in your own chart. Stay tuned. We'll work with our example in just another minute here. And we can get into more details like that. But as you're also looking at the screen, you will see that the beginning of February, right about the time we're getting ready to have a Mercury retrograde. Mercury's retrograde February 6th to the 28th. And its retrograde is going to be Pisces Aquarius, so the degrees are not quite there so much, but the timing is. Right at the beginning of February, Lucifer will make a last quarter square to Jupiter. Could bring up the upsets around family issues, around emotional insecurities. It can trip us up with that emotional self-reliance lessening. The inner wounded child, and really, taking and needing that extra effort to heal our own emotions. And then 2 days later, it makes a first quarter square to Pluto. So that T-square with Lucifer will be real tight at the beginning of next month. Just a few weeks away. We can be feeling this influence already. Lucifer making a first quarter square to Pluto, we can lose our courage in really trying to move forward and take charge of our life. Capricorn, we can be too authoritarian in some way. We can fall into our own patriarchal influences and my way or the highway. I'm not sharing with you. I'm going for all I can get from me and fluff you. Now, bringing Lucifer in on a more positive level, you would be continuing to make that effort to do it a different way, do it a different way, do it a new way, do it a new way. For us, it's continuing to make an effort to teach these classes on a webinar basis, even though our web programmer suffered an accident Go look at our last week's podcast if you want to see some details on that. And we are experiencing a delay getting our students area of the website up and running, and different things where we want to put these webinars on our website. We're still going forward with the classes, even if it takes us a while to get them posted so that everybody can see them afterwards. It's continuing to go forward with your new world, your new realities, regardless of how many times you feel upset, regardless of how many times you feel emotionally defeated. And one of the real biggies is then, as we move into mid-March, right after Mars goes retrograde, Lucifer is going to make the opposition to Mars. And we will have that opposition take place March 14th at about 26-27 degrees Aries Libra. That could be another time period where there's a lot of feistiness and a lot of drawing lines in the sand, my way or the highway, selfishness, the things we talked about with Lucifer and Aries before, narcissism, being very infantile, and just really not wanting to take anybody else into consideration, not wanting to look at our role in the relationships in our world. And as Mars is retrograde at that time, its polarity is going to be pointing to Aries. And I think that this Mars retrograde cycle in particular, and I'm going to do I have a separate class coming on that at the beginning of March. This Mars retrograde in particular, Mars in Libra is in its opposite sign of rulership, which is Aries. And Mars in Libra can get quite wishy-washy. And put a Mars retrograde in Libra, and how do I go forward? How do I go forward? This Mars retrograde in particular is going to ask us to go into action and initiate going forward all through its retrograde cycle. Making the effort, 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 until something sticks and moves forward. Because what we've really got to work with this Grand Cross, again, is that tension of moving forward, and how cardinal energy operates is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We initiate the new, and then it gets insecure because we've never done it before. It's unknown, and we fall back. And what we have to be careful of is 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards. And so as long as we're making the effort to move forward through all of this cardinal Grand Cross energy, especially the first 6 months of this year, then sooner or later something is going to solidify. Something's going to become that new foundation that we are evolving and growing into. Do I have any questions on what I'm saying with this right here? I'm going to move forward. I'm not seeing any question marks, any hands raised on the board. So you've got the dates here. You can look at where this is active in your chart. Pay attention to this as much as you can. And remember, Lucifer is going to try to undermine your initiations. And you're going to have to find a way to go forward. You're going to have to find your courage to go forward as you're trying to mature emotionally, as you're trying to take responsibility for your own life, and as you're trying to do it in fairness between yourself and others. Remember I said every 5-year cycle, Lucifer has 4 retrograde cycles. If you follow Lucifer every 5 years, 5 years after 5 years after 5 years, each retrograde cycle, it's kind of like that Venus star point, except it's a square. Each revolution, Venus is, when it comes back to have a retrograde cycle in the same area, it has moved forward 5 to 15 degrees in each sign. So, for instance, we just got done with the Lucifer retrograde cycle in Aries Pisces. Before that was Pisces to Pisces. Now it's moving from having retrograde cycles from the sign of Pisces into the sign of Aries. The next cycle 5 years from now will still be Pisces Aries, and after that it's probably going to be completely in Aries. So here's where it makes that square right now with the signs. Gemini to Cancer, or when it's retrograde, it goes retrograde from Cancer back into Gemini. Then it does Leo Virgo. Then it does Scorpio to Sag. And then it does Pisces to Aries. Now here is where it's actually doing. It's 4 retrograde cycles through this new revolution, through this new 5-year cycle around the sun through the zodiac. You can copy these down with your PDF as you want to. You can see its next retrograde will come October 27th of this year, 5-6 Cancer, back to February 11th, 21 Gemini. And then you see the one after that, Virgo back to Leo. And then the one in 2017, Sag back to Scorpio. And then Aries to Pisces again. You'll have the PDF to refer to this as we go through the 3 examples of the charts. And I'm going to try and keeping track of my time. I actually made a note between signs and houses of how many of the 12 archetypes, Lucifer through the 12 archetypes I was covering. And I cover every single archetype except one, which is Aquarius. And so I will try not to leave Aquarius behind. So we'll make it through as we look at these examples with that. And so, unless I have questions, I'm going to move right into some chart examples for everybody. Now, in the world of evolutionary astrology, well, you know, maybe if you want to, Leroy, I would let you do a poll question again if you have another poll question you want to ask before I get started in my example.
Sure. Yeah, let's do another poll question here. This is kind of another trick question, but we'll launch it anyway. Which of these is known as one of the largest asteroids in that asteroid belt? So I'll invite everybody to vote for their largest asteroid out of, is it Lucifer? Is it Vesta? Pallas? Eris? Or Ceres? And warning in advance, it is a trick question. But I just love doing these polls because it helps engage everybody and kind of participate. We can discuss it afterwards, so it's a learning tool, Kim.
I know, and it gives me a chance to have a glass of water because boy, can I run through the water when I teach these classes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I forgot my water. I had to run upstairs and get a refreshment. Easier for me to do than it is for you, though, however.
Well, it is, and I'm realizing that a glass of water sometimes might not be enough for me. So if you refill, I'll take a second glass of water.
Okay. Well, we're cleansing, so yeah. All right. So nearly everyone's voted. I've got 3 out of 4 at least have. Close the poll, and let's share those results one time. Basically, Ceres was known as the largest asteroid in the asteroid belt, something like, gosh, I think it was 600 miles wide. But of course, it was elevated soon thereafter to the dwarf planet status. So Ceres is your answer as the largest asteroid before its promotion, I guess we should say, to the dwarf planet status, which was kind of a controversial, I guess, definition. So thank you for participating in our second poll of the night.
You know, we should also say that Sirius was the first asteroid discovered as well.
Absolutely.
And you know, of course, there is the pretty much a consensus now that the dinosaurs were wiped out by a major asteroid hitting planet Earth and creating a big crater. And I can't remember where that crater was.
Yeah.
I can't remember. It was
Hit somewhere, didn't it? Yeah.
somewhere, I want to say North America. It wiped out a lot of, it didn't wipe off all life on planet Earth, but it did wipe it out to the dinosaurs. And we probably wouldn't have our humans on the planet if that asteroid would not have struck planet Earth.
So Ceres
Probably would.
was discovered in 1991, and it is 583 miles across.
I think it was before 1991. No,
Oh,
Sirius, um, Chiron was discovered in what, 1977. Sirius, I want to say goes back to the 1930s, but I don't remember
I
that
jotted
fact for
my
sure.
notes. I'm incorrect, so excuse that. Yeah, we'll have to find that. In fact,
Okay.
I'll kind of research this for us right now.
Yeah, you can go ahead and do that. By the way, when an asteroid does hit planet Earth, they changed its classification into a meteorite. And there's three different types of asteroids, and that's all based upon what type of rock material they are, which minerals they're composed of. And I don't remember those off the top of my head, but there's three classifications of rocks for the asteroids, and I don't even know which one of those Lucifer is because you don't read about it in many of your astronomy sites, which is where I sometimes go looking for information. So I have three charts to use as example, and looking at our time, I can do about 15 minutes for each chart. And so, Leroy, our volunteer number one from Biloxi, Mississippi birth date, if you can work to unmute her. And our volunteer, if oh, I hear noise. Do I have my volunteer?
I'm here.
Hello there. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Now, if I remember right, you're calling in on a phone, right?
That's right.
Okay, but I'm sure you are familiar with your chart that we're looking at on the screen, and I'm sure you're familiar that Lucifer for you is about 1120 Capricorn, just inside your seventh house cusp, correct?
Correct.
All right, and so I'm a little familiar with some of the background in your chart. I know that you have recently went through a separation in marriage, and were you married? Are you in process of divorce? How quickly can you just give me a little background?
Sure. Well, we have a child together, and we never got legally married. We
Okay.
were together for about 11 years, and
Mhm.
so we've been separated about a year and a half.
Mhm.
That I got my own home and everything, and the separation process has kind of been for a couple years, but it was just about
Mhm.
doing the logistics of doing the separating.
Mhm.
Um, so
All right. Well, thank you for that. So, for the sake of our listeners, I just want to briefly talk about natal Lucifer and then kind of speak about where that transiting Lucifer is hitting your chart because it's activating, three different points, and those planets square the nodes in your chart, so you really have natal and transiting Lucifer pretty active for yourself right now. So I'll give a couple of comments, and then you're please jump in and ask questions or give me some feedback into that as well, okay?
okay.
So natal Lucifer, when it's in Capricorn, where we'll get undermined and where we could find some of those separating forces is in the ability to take charge of our own life. And especially if you start to put Lucifer also in the 7th house, the Libra house, we can fall into feeling that everybody else has more power and knowledge and wisdom than ourselves. And we can perhaps fall into the inequalities. And so either we could be looking for that partner to take care of us, or we could fall into someone who ends up taking care of the partner. Would you feel that any of those fell into what you have experienced?
Yes, definitely. All of that resonates in that, I mean, pretty much my whole life, I feel like I've like allowed others to have the wisdom, and felt an inequality. And then in my partnerships with significant others, I was definitely, when transiting Pluto started squaring my Pluto, I started having a situation with my partner where I did, where he became ill, and I was the one who was doing everything to help him, but he was not really trying to help himself. And so I eventually found that I had to leave the relationship because it was just depleting me. And go ahead.
That could definitely be one of them. Oh, and we hear a young one on the phone too.
Yeah, of course, out of all the whole class, she's been quiet. Now that I'm actually talking, she wants my attention. But
yeah, that's going to fall into that whole dynamic as well. You know, something else. Remember, when we have that influence by the separating forces trying to undermine us, one of the things we have to do is find our willpower, find our self-determination. Self-determination is a Capricorn word. And so that is, again, an area that you're just called on to just be able to reach out. And with it having a wide opposition to the ascendant, the South Node, to that Saturn in Cancer, you can get caught up into feeling that you do have to sacrifice yourself for others, and there can be a lack of healthy boundaries on when and how to give, to not give, to share with others. Again, I could speak to your chart and all these different aspects that are going on for hours, all right? Looking at that Venus new phase to the Pluto down there in 4th house, bottom of the chart, you know, there's lessons for you to really move forward with your own emotional self-reliance. Those two planets square the nodes. Again, go back to that South Node resolution node to really do the healing as deeply as possible on emotional levels so that you can then access the 10th house, the North Node in Capricorn, and really take charge of your own life and create it. And Lucifer wants to just trip you up with that again and again and again.
That's true. I mean, that's something that I was pretty amazed when I saw that my Lucifer was right there at 11 degrees because of all the contacts it makes. And one thing is that it's squaring my Venus. And I feel like I've had a lot of experiences in that where I have not really valued myself. I value other people in a way more.
Yes.
And it's interesting because I've just been hit in this last few years of just, it's been very intense with experiencing through relationships, just like, okay, you know, are you going to value yourself? Are you going to value yourself? And I've felt like I've had a lot of like betrayals, but on another level, it's been really interesting because I've also, probably more than ever in my life, I have valued myself. And I have made choices that I felt were very liberating because I was willing to value myself when other people weren't. But so I see, and I can see that theme in my life literally since the beginning.
Another theme that might be there with the Pluto in Libra generation, Venus in Libra, Lucifer in the Libra house, is one of the things that Libra sometimes does when it's distorted, when it's influenced, is a denial of what's in front of you. I don't want to look at that. I don't want to see that. I don't want to notice that. I'm just going to put a smile on my face and pretend like everything is fine and hunky-dory. And so there's another influence of Capricorn in the 7th, the Libra house. It's just a denial of what is real and what is going on, and the need with that polarity in Aries to actually be able to take charge of one's life, to find your own independence, to find, okay, this is what is real. Now face it. What are you going to do about it, Capricorn? How are you going to take charge and change it? Lucifer, Cap, 7th. And so as you work to access taking charge of your own life and just being as real with yourself and others as you possibly can, then you're taking that Lucifer archetype and turning it around. And if you will notice, Lucifer's in a grand trine with Mars in Taurus, which could be another addition to that Libra-Venus denial. Okay. It's in the grand trine of Earth signs. And let's see, we have Earth signs and air houses. So the grand trine with the Earth signs could further reiterate that denial of what's real, of what's right in front of your eyes. And add on the Earth house, or excuse me, the air houses, the Gemini, Libra, Aquarius houses. You could just talk yourself out of things, talk yourself through things. You know, I could be denying from the neck down and just pretending that everything from the neck up in my head is what is real. When you would look at Lucifer aspects the same way you would look at any other planetary archetype. When there is the grand trines, you can have an ease of resistance. When you make the effort, you can have understandings. So being able to go, listen, what is real here? What is actually taking place? Then you can access that real energy, reality, and then you can use that air trine house to process through it, reflect it, and make the efforts to change reality. In the same respect, when Lucifer is in hard aspects of conjunctions, squares, oppositions, semi-squares, sesquisquadrates, you know, it's a little harder to resist that energy. Somehow, sooner or later, we either fall for the influence of the separating forces, or we get the energy, we get the courage and willpower to do something about it and change it. Lucifer transiting up there in your 10th house, in Aries, is magnifying that natal signature of Lucifer in Capricorn, 7th, and saying, all right, time to take charge of my world, time to do something about it. It's recently opposed your Pluto, so this is your soul recognizing how, again, Aries polarity, take charge of my own life. How am I needing to move forward? How many times do I have to make the effort until I get somewhere, 10th house? As it opposes your Venus, You know, Lucifer is going to be pretty tight in that Grand Cross for you over this next month or so. And then Mars will do it with Lucifer with your Uranus, okay?
Hmm.
It's really going to have ask you to find a deep inner self-love that
Hmm.
you can take forth charting new territory, 10th house that you've never been in before, not only with relationships, but with your life and with your work and career. You might find changes in that whole work environment as well as any relationships or even friendships that you are encountering. You're embarking on a whole new world, and you just need to make the effort again and again and again and again. You
Yeah,
ready?
that's what it feels like. Hmm.
Do you have questions with what I'm saying?
No, it resonates with me,
Mhm.
and I don't think so. I mean, I've been having really amazing dreams regarding some of this,
Mhm.
and um, definitely been making new choices um, where I feel like I've been asked to value myself. Um,
Mhm.
and the interesting thing about that was just how liberating it felt. So I think I do understand this shift.
Mhm. All right. All right. So anybody else, if you're looking at the chart as we're looking at these examples and you have any questions, you can, again, use the little hand symbol to raise your hand, or you are welcome to just type it in and Leroy can ask the question for me. If it's easy, he'll even answer it and type it back to you. So, yes, by natal configuration, which means throughout this lifetime, and by transit in the first few months of this year, this archetype is very active for you. And so, in closing, I would just encourage you to ask the questions inwardly. Ask Source Energy itself. What would you have me know in going forward towards the light? I want to know Source. Source, I want you to directly speak to me in how I should deepen my relationship with myself, Venus, Pluto, squaring Lucifer, how I should change my relationships with the world with these signatures. How would you
Mm.
have me take charge of my life? And it's more of a feeling like you have inner charge of your life rather than feeling bounced around by circumstances and people and situations.
Mm-hmm.
Now I see a question being raised on the board. Leroy, is there a question for us before we move on?
Yeah,
Comment?
there is. Carmela is asking about orbs for asteroids, Kim, and I was just in the process of responding, but go ahead. This would be great for the tape.
Well, evolutionary astrology is quite famous for using wide orbs because if you look at the process in natural law of evolution, and every planet is in a phasal relationship to every other planet, we take those 5 major asteroids, we use just as wide of orbs. Now, when we get to conjunctions, squares, oppositions, sextiles, trines, semi-squares, sesquisquadrates, we will use 5, 10-degree orbs. I would include Lucifer in that as well. The energy is there by the process of evolution. You start to get to some of the minor aspects like a semi-sextile, you can use 10 degrees there. I have found that the more and more I look at charts and everything relating to everything else, I sometimes just use general 10-degree rule of thumb. It's applying, it's separating. And it's in that evolutionary process. So yes, wide orbs for Lucifer as well as any other planetary bodies. I would imagine you might be able to expand that to all of the asteroids, whichever personal ones you want to move in your chart. It just so happens, if you're not familiar, this is the asteroid Vesta where my arrow is, the asteroid of purification. This is the asteroid Pallas Athena, the asteroid of the social warrior and goddess of justice. Here is the asteroid Ceres of mothering, nurturing. Here's the asteroid Juno of relationships. And I think Chiron is in there. I'm holding on. Do I not put Chiron in? Sometimes oh, here's the asteroid Chiron. Chiron is still an asteroid even though it is in between the orbits of Saturn and Uranus. Asteroids exist beyond the Neptune-Pluto orbits as well. They, again, exist throughout the solar system, even though the asteroid belt is called between Mars and Jupiter. Alrighty, Lisi. Whoops, I'm sorry. I'm trying not to use my volunteer names because I didn't ask anybody, so I apologize for that. But do you have any final questions in regards to your chart?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for letting me use it as an example. And so I'm going to move on now, all right? So thank you very much, honey. And next is our second chart, whose birth is Brooklyn, New York. And so if you want to raise that little hand, that question mark, I think you're on the call. Leroy will see you and he'll unmute you and we can speak and work with you. Do I have volunteer number 2 on the line?
Go ahead, Vicki.
Do you see her, Leroy?
Yeah, she's unmuted.
Yeah. Here we are. Speak it up. So, hello, volunteer. Do you have your headset muted?
Remember, you will have to have a headset into your computer, mic and speakers, or use your open mic on your computer, perhaps, in order to be heard.
Mm-hmm. And I don't remember which one is actually the little green icon with the microphone on it. That's how you mute and unmute yourself.
Okay, let me try this. Go ahead and try again, Vicki. If you don't mind me recognizing you by your name, go ahead. I just cannot hear you, Vicki. You're unmuted on the board, so there must be a plug-in that's not. Your headset must not be plugged into your computer, or this is probably a good opportunity to talk to everybody about those audio requirements you want to check into. Is that you, Vicki? I'll invite you to find a USB headset or a set of earbuds and plug them into your laptop if you can.
If you have a newer computer or I think iPod, okay, yes.
All right,
yes,
Vic.
we can. Yes, we can. Hi there. When you said, "Can you hear me now?" we heard you. All right, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, might have a little background noise. And so, volunteer number 2, I am not familiar with your chart. I haven't looked at it before. Give me just briefly, married, divorce, kids, job. Give me just a little bit of information on you if you don't mind. If you're speaking, we cannot hear a word. If you want to volunteer number 2, because this might be a little frustrating for you, take a deep breath, open up your menu, and down there where it has questions, type in a little bit of background information, and Leroy will just share it with me. I'm going to start a little generically, which is tough for evolutionary astrologers because we always want those environmental conditionings as we know it. Social, religious, political background. But as you can see, we're working with an archetype here of Lucifer at about 9 degrees Virgo in the 2nd house. And I didn't get my circles drawing in this chart, but you can see my little V with the line drawn through it, my simple little glyph that I make up for Lucifer.
And Kim,
So,
we have some feedback from Miss V. It's
right.
she's been divorced many years. She does have a daughter and 2 granddaughters, and works in healthcare.
Okay, how about religious or spiritual conditionings as I look at that Sun in Sag conjunct the South Node and Lucifer square those nodes? So when we're working in general with that archetype of Lucifer and Virgo, think of the distortions of Virgo. Self-doubt, inner, outer criticism. That, go ahead, Leroy.
Well, she just had posted a Catholic upbringing, but really felt like indeed she was more Wiccan forever as she went through that experience. So, you know, we all know that the Jewish folks might have invented guilt, and the Catholics might have perfected it.
Yep, you're familiar with the recovering Catholic phrase. So let me just kind of start generically again with Virgo. Those influences with the separating forces would just be undermining. Anytime there was self-doubt, they would come along and just magnify it. Anytime there was this sense of guilt over not being good enough, smart enough, perfect enough, it would just be undermined. When you put Lucifer in the 2nd house or that Taurus archetype, there would be a lack of self-reliance. Anytime there was a feeling that there weren't enough resources, separating forces would come along and just magnify it, influence it, try to create and intensify that fear around never having enough, even if you were surrounded by all kinds of resources in one's life. The feelings could be different than that. It is a double earth signature. So here again, it will bring in reality as the soul senses it versus what is real. And so there can be an out of touch with what is real for oneself. And perhaps overly clinging to material resources as an only sense of security. And when you start to look at the fact that Lucifer is square the nodes, and in the evolutionary astrology world with the nodes going backwards, you'd start with Lucifer and you would go reversing through the zodiac or clockwise through the houses. And if the north node was at 847 Gemini, it'd be exact. So it's applying to be square the nodes. All right, the nodes are applying to be exactly square to Lucifer, which means Lucifer square the nodes could be increasing in its potential or influencing. And going back to what I was saying with natal Lucifer, there can, again, looking at these nodes in Gemini, Sag, South Node in Sag, and that Sun, where when a planet is conjunct the South Node, there is either relive, fruition, enough prior effort that things are coming to fruition, or what's most common a swinging back and forth between the two. And so what I'm looking at as I'm starting to pick up on this chart is a couple of different patterns and themes. An undermining of natural law and how you've known it from past lives. An undermining of what is real in regards to resources. There could be a sense of, again, I'm looking at that North Node in Gemini 11th house, double air signature, a real sensitivity with the nervous system. And so always feeling like at any minute the other shoe's going to drop, and you're going to lose a sense of security and stableness in your world. Now, that South Node signature, there could have been past lives in which one could have been overconfident. Double fire, special destiny. I know the rules. I know everything. I am stronger than the separating forces. And Pachu, Lucifer there in that second house, you lost your life. And so it could have created some paralyzation in regards to really being able to break free and move forward. We have Lucifer square the nodes in fixed houses. So here again, and Lucifer square the nodes in mutable signs. So the mutable signs tell us that there can be some remembrance of natural law. But as we worked with that, as we maybe tried to hold on to it through the patriarchal uprisings, if there was a sense of ego that I know better, it caused you to have deep hurts. Again, loss of life. You can relate this back to, by nature of your birth date, you see where Saturn is balsamic Pluto, and you see here in the first house, if you're looking at this, Saturn is 8.5 Leo retrograde, Pluto is 13 Leo retrograde, Saturn is balsamic Pluto, double fire signature. That mini generation of Saturn balsamic Pluto is the soul is having to let go of the control that it's used to. It's having to surrender to higher power. And fire sign, fire house, there can be a resistance to letting go of being in charge, a resistance of being in control of your world. Lucifer will come in and undermine that signature by, again, wiping things out and then causing you to feel that no matter how hard you try to take charge of your life, it never works. So how the healing, how the returning forces need to work with Lucifer here is an inner power. Second house, self-reliance. Lucifer Virgo, an inner self-worth over that self-doubt. Accessing that polarity, which is Pisces and the Scorpio house, you know, really working to rediscover one's relationship with source energy. That South Node Sun conjunction in Sag, again, a natural understanding of natural law and spiritual principles, but perhaps some undermining of that, some distortion of that fifth house. I know, thinking that you can, fifth house, I will, my will, divine will, the Leo energy. You could have, again, thought that you had more power, Saturn Balsamic Pluto than what you actually had. So there could be some type of humbling energy that's going on with that, Virgo. And then a return to more authentic power. And that polarity point with Pisces in the 8th house is really, this is the polarity point of Lucifer, again, Pisces, 8th house, really saying, I want to know God, I want to see the light, I want to return. And it will then allow for a recapturing of more authentic inner power that then will realign you to be a natural teacher again. As you're listening to this, volunteer number 2, does this resonate for you? Anybody else? Questions, answers as I'm starting to explain this? What you're going to be getting is that again, you will look at the separating forces as a distortion of the archetypes. You look at the returning forces as healing or naturally expressing the archetype. Leroy, any comments coming back from volunteer number 2? And I'll see if I have this.
Well, as you've been reading, I have been interacting with her, Kim, via the Q&A board and passing along her responses in private messages to everybody in the call. And thank you, V, for letting me do that. It sounds like as I've been forwarding these responses from her, you're right on, Kim, and you are kind of defining a new beginning for Miss V.
Yeah, so there's really a opportunity here for your soul to really have a realignment with your more authentic self. And of course, as Lucifer, the resolution node for Lucifer is that North Node, Gemini, 11th house, Uranus house. Uranus is conjunct that North Node. And so there's this need to breathe, to calm oneself down, to be able to detach sometimes from all of that hot, fiery, excitable energy of that soul signature by Pluto in the South Node. You know, you got double fires when you look at Pluto sign house, South Node sign house. So that can get so excitable, and then things explode, and then that Lucifer archetype is able to undermine your reality one more time. Well, the healing of this, Lucifer square the nodes, is again going to that North Node and going, wait a minute, don't react, Gemini. Breathe. Uranus, 11th house, detach from the immediacy of the situation. Step back, take a larger look at the bigger picture. What would Source want me to know about the whole situation? Take some time and allow yourself the ability to process. Lucifer second house takes time. Lucifer Virgo, process, analyze it. Take time for considered responses rather than reactivity. And that's going to then again allow you to breathe your way back into your more authentic energy and allow you to chart brand new courses in relationships, that Pluto polarity point. And look what's happening to transiting Lucifer right now over there in Aries. And I can't always be fast enough to see all of the aspects going on, but it's going to make that last quarter square to the moon over here in Cancer 12, and it's going to oppose Neptune over here in Libra. So you've got some new energy that you can be working with this cardinal cross in your chart. It's activating some things in your chart as well. to find your trust and faith in source energy and just really, really call in the light. Call in my own authentic power again. Call in the real me. It's okay to surrender myself to source. I'm not going to go off the deep end. Really, you could be initiating rituals and practices. I gave you some examples in the slides earlier. The Agni ritual, the Ho'oponopono forgiveness prayer. There's some things that you can really be calling in for yourself right now that can be working to calm you down and allow you to pace yourself. And as Lucifer, by transit in Aries, moves over into that 10th house, to initiate a real taking charge of your inner world that will eventually reflect outwards. And Lucifer will go 5 years, and all of you can follow those transits that Lucifer will make 4 times over the next 5 years. That you can, Lucifer going into that 10th house, working for, again, what I'm seeing is a real, authentic inner power. And just asking, questing with that activation of a T-square with Moon Neptune for source energy to come alive within you. And every time separating forces undermines your belief in yourself, in God, in the universe, call it in again, call it in again, call it in again, call it in again. And that will allow you to build bigger trust in the universe. And what I see here with that Sun-South Node conjunction is to allow the real, authentic teacher to come back, to come alive again, to be a real teacher to your grandchildren, 5th house, maybe even working with children as you move on in this lifetime. Rediscovering the innocence in the universe, the love in the universe. And working with children could be a way to do that. All right, keeping track of time, is there any questions I need to answer, Leroy?
No, Vicky is just responding, thank you. She's starting some new business ventures, a new digital magazine featuring healing, and I can see that powerful transit of Lucifer, which, by the way, will form an interesting yod to her natal Lucifer in that Sun-South Node conjunction sometime in the next year and a half.
Won't be a yod, it'll be sesquisquadrates.
Ah.
Although Lucifer, when it moves into Taurus, will make a yod to Neptune and the South Node. So you can look for that. That yod will come along in the April, May time period. Oh, yeah. It will come along in the April time period. Second half of April, early May, if you include the sun in that. And
thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, and again, Lucifer in Taurus will attempt to undermine how you are moving forward with your new adventures, and so perseverance is an energy of Taurus when we feel that we are going to have a rug ripped out underneath us. All right, I'm taking longer. I would like to go through one more volunteer chart. And volunteer number 3, if you can see, you are San Juan, Puerto Rico, and so the same thing. I don't know if you got a mic and headset, if you're more comfortable doing the little, let's see how, If it's real loud, I may need you to go back to typing if you can. Volunteer number 3, can you speak up?
Hello.
Oh, I can hear you. Hello. Hi there. I know I've looked at your chart before, but it's been a while that I don't remember, and I wanted to include you because you had a Lucifer retrograde. So for our listeners, could you just briefly give me some information in regards to your life, your background? Married, divorced, religion, kids, go.
Okay, second marriage now. Religion, well, brought up in Catholic Church, but with that was part of my family living with my aunts, very Catholic, but my mother and my father were not Catholic, and they were very, like, they believe in past lives and astrology and all these things. It was just part-time Catholic.
Got it. Children?
3 children, 8 grandchildren, and 2 great-grand.
Family. All that 4th house energy. Did you work outside the home? Do you?
I am still a writer.
Okay.
At home.
Do you write fiction or nonfiction?
Literature. Literature, but also I'm well, I used to write all these themes like past lives and all these things like well, all my characters have their signs and everything, and now I'm doing the same thing, but I don't want to be doing it so much like literature, but like nonfiction.
So starting to put a little astrology into your writing, or a little metaphysics more and more into it.
Metaphysics is very important for me, yes.
Oh, gotcha. Now, do you publish more in the Spanish language than you do English?
Everything in Spanish.
Okay. Where are your books published? Where's your audience?
Puerto Rico.
Okay. All right.
Spanish speaking.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you. All right. And now, have you ever looked at the asteroid Lucifer in your chart?
No, never. I didn't know this it was. Yeah.
So this is a whole new concept somewhat to you.
Yes, Lucifer is new for me, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for that. I'll see what I can drum up for you. You can see that you have 4 planets in the 4th house. You have Saturn Moon in Cancer. You have the North Node. North Node goes retrograde, so it's almost finished up with Cancer. Lucifer is there at about 4 degrees even Cancer, but it is retrograde. And you can see then that you have the Neptune square the nodes. Neptune is a square to that Lucifer. So as I'm working with this signature somewhat for your chart, I would say that there's been lifetimes of lessening around gender issues. 4th house Pluto, Saturn in 4th house, Saturn in Cancer. You see the Saturn moon signature there. I don't know if you have any past life knowledge of whether you were male in a previous lifetime most recently, or if you feel like you're needing to change genders. There's going to be some type of lessening around that, all right? And
can you repeat that?
Pardon?
Can you repeat that?
There's lessening around gender issues in general in your chart. Okay?
I have
So,
like I remember some lives I was a man and some I was a woman.
I would say both would be in there.
Yeah.
And here's what I'm going to ask you, one or two more questions, all right?
Uh-huh.
Do you feel that you are more comfortable with your feminine side or your masculine side?
Um, I'm very androgynous. Do you say that?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
uh-huh,
Yeah.
okay. So, um, then looking at how Lucifer exists in your chart and looking at the fact that, again, Saturn, Moon, and Mars are all balsamic to Pluto, the soul. So this in general is going to be a lifetime where you're going to draw in old family members from past lives.
Uh-huh.
Be it husbands, be it your parents, be it children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. There's going to
Mhm.
be many of those family members you're going to draw in, and you're just going to intuitively have known them before.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And some of them, it's going to feel very bonding, very comfortable, very loving. Others, it's going to feel a little more friction, so to speak, a little more of the karma. There's this issue or that issue.
Yes, yes.
I'm going to guess that you're going to be on both sides of the parenting fence. There are going to be situations in which there is over parenting or situations in which there is under parenting.
Mm. With
An
the same
example, go
children?
ahead.
With the
With
same children?
with it could be with the same child, yes. It could be with different family members.
Uh-huh.
For instance, you could come through and you could feel like you had to parent your mother when she was the parent and you were the child. In other words, the whole parenting roles are topsy-turvy all over the place. And you have to figure out on an intuitive level, all right, in this situation, I have to be careful of over-parenting. In this situation, I have to be careful of being the needy one who's looking for a parent. In other words, it's not going to be black and white. Okay, I am parented by my parents, I parent my children. It goes back and forth all over the place because, again, through many lifetimes, everyone who's in your family of origin, both directions, parents, grandparents, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and lovers, everyone who's in your family of origin, you're trying to heal the gender roles. You're trying to heal all of the parenting and nurturing dynamics. Who do I take care of and who do I let learn their own lessons? Who's trying to take care of me and where do I need to step up and take care of myself? That's just in looking at Pluto in the fourth house. That's South Node Capricorn, just the nodes in Capricorn, Cancer. So now, how Lucifer comes into this role, Lucifer in Cancer, we will have the distortions of not taking care of our own emotional needs in different ways. I.e., and I'm not saying this is you, but maybe you were daddy's girl and you never had to grow up and be responsible for yourself. I don't, example,
Yes.
okay? So the emotional self-reliance dynamic gets undermined. Who will love me? looking for the lover to support, to replace the father figure. Moon new phase Saturn really needing to initiate taking care of your own needs, even in family of origin with parents, even in with lovers, even to sacrificing your own needs to taking care of children. Lucifer will always be undermining the emotions and what's really going on. And you put Lucifer in the third house, and it brings emotional confusion.
Mm-hmm.
Who should I love? Who should I support? You could have had time periods in your past with Neptune square the nodes and square Lucifer where you could have had multiple choices in who to marry. And which one do I choose? Oh, should I marry this one or should I marry that one? Should I marry, And so there's that Lucifer signature, what I see is emotional confusion. And so you needing to find alone space to process through those emotions, to really see how you feel, versus being influenced by everybody else in your home environment. How many siblings did you have? Did you have siblings?
I have two sisters from my father's previous relation, and one sister with the same mother and father.
So 3 siblings all together, and they were all sisters.
Yes.
Yes. Did you get along with all of them?
Well, the two older ones, we didn't see each other very frequently, but yes, we get along. But with the one that is my mother and father, we get along very well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just would say overall, there's a lot of karmic relationships in that family of origin, ranging from, again, close to friction. And Lucifer, with that signature, would always be wanting to undermine the emotional dynamics and keep everything stirred up. And you needing quiet space to really process through emotionally, to see what's really going on, versus having, again, third house reactions, especially if the emotions get stirred up, and then taking family dynamics and making them worse rather than better, keeping the family feuds alive. With Lucifer retrograde, there is an energy. In other words, you've resisted dealing with family dynamics and patterns in past lives. And so in this lifetime, the Lucifer retrograde has meant you don't get to hang out in the family feuds. You don't get to hang out in the emotional confusion. You've got to go over to that polarity to Lucifer, which is back to that south node. And you need to really look at your role, Capricorn, your responsibilities in what is said, Sag, in the larger picture. What has been your role in some of the family dynamics? You're not entirely a victim. You've probably been on both sides of the fence. Where has that Neptune in Libra square the nodes hung out in your side versus what was really going on? Because in any story, there's always 3 sides. There's my side, there's your side, and there's what really happened. And so being able to step back and take larger looks at all of that can sometimes take time, can take reflection, Capricorn. It can take looking at larger picture. Does this make sense for you?
A lot of sense, yes.
Mm-hmm. And I would say that you would want to make the effort because Lucifer is conjunct the resolution node, as we call it, when a planet is square the node. Okay, and you can make it a little wide and include a few of those other Libra planets just by association. You know, there's going to be family relationships in which, again, it can degenerate Libra sixth house into inner outer criticisms, you know, drawing lines in the sand. You're going to want to always keep reaching for the deepest level of love you can find for all those family members. If you feel that there's a family member who has done you wrong, quote unquote, this life or past lives, it doesn't mean you get to let them, they're allowed to run over you one more time and ignore your feelings. You may have to hold a healthy boundary, detach yourself, but you want to always, you would want to be really practicing the Hawaiian forgiveness prayer, that Ho'oponopono I mentioned earlier. You would really want to be doing your best to find emotional peace with healthy boundaries and working on unconditional love with them and from a distance if you need to, so that you are bringing those family patterns over lifetimes and lifetimes to healing, to closure. If it's family members in which there's karma and you do have interactions and relating to each other, you would want to make an effort. If they are not willing, or they reject you, or they continue to project or blame, you've made the effort. Third house. And then you detach from them and come back to, in other words, you're always wanting to come back to emotional self-reliance on deepest levels possible. Lucifer as the light. And then ask Source, how do I love this person? How do I love that person? And allow Source to bring through on emotional levels what's the healthiest way to give and receive, Neptune, Libra, with each individual member of your family dynamics. And that's the way out of that emotional confusion that keeps the pot stirred or the family feuds going. You always coming back to the emotional peace so that you are loving and speaking as clearly as possible with each and every family member, because it'll be all over the place with all the family members you have. And then you can be returning to your matriarchal role in this lifetime in a healthy way, and then that inner male, you're either taking charge where you need to, or you're requiring them to take charge of their life as they need to do so. I would imagine that your own family dynamics provide you with a wealth of resources for characters in your writing.
Yes, a lot, yes.
And so you're really wanting to find again your healthiest role as a matriarch. And you can also look for what is the healthy role on the patriarchal side as well. Healthy patriarchy, healthy masculine energy. Helping hand when somebody's sincerely trying to take charge of their own life. And healthy boundaries when they're trying to take advantage of your emotional sensitivities.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for instance, let's just use an example. A needy grandchild who doesn't want to grow up and hold down a job or take responsibility for their self. And grandma, can I have a little more money? Grandma, can I have a little more money? Grandma, can I have a little more money? You know, and you're gonna, that Lucifer signature is you're gonna mentally beat yourself up anytime you hold a healthy emotional boundary with that grandchild. And then, you know, again, Lucifer sucks you in one more time to enable. And
Mm-hmm.
it can be hard to hold those healthy emotional boundaries with your signature, your signatures. Is this making sense? Does this work?
A lot of sense, really, a lot of sense. Yeah.
Questions or questions from the board, Leroy?
I just want to thank you, Kim.
Oh, you're most welcome. And I'm just looking at the time, and I didn't do very good on 15 minutes apiece and getting ourselves out of here at 8 o'clock, but it gave you some examples. Now, if I may, I'm going to just, in closing, say when Lucifer is in Aquarius or that 11th house, and I think I did have some type of 11th house signature, it's just going to try and undermine the trauma and keep the trauma, the traumatization, the victimization alive and well. And Lucifer as the light with Uranus, Aquarius in the 11th house is really being able to reach for objectivity and then move forward and live one's life rather than remaining paralyzed. Now, for transiting Lucifer in Volunteer 3's chart, it's in that 12th house. As you can see, it's going to be doing some Grand Cross energy for you. It's already started with the nodes. It'll continue on. I would say that there's a lot of potential for deeper spiritual wisdoms you can recognize with Lucifer in the 12th. When transiting Lucifer in Aries goes over that ascendant, it really is for you to put some of this wisdom we've just talked about into practice. And making that effort again and again and again till you see that emotional peace. You speak with emotional clarity and you're holding those emotional or those healthy boundaries however best you see them. I'm realizing the time, so thank you, Miss Volunteer 3. And Leroy,
Thanks a lot to you.
oh, you bet. We'll connect again. And Leroy, do I have any final questions or comments from you or anybody from board?
No, you've done your job, Kim Marie. It's been a great class, and I think all the participants would agree with that. And no questions on the board, so we're safe.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for allowing me to go a little overboard. I actually thought that this class would be less than 2 hours. So I very much thank you for sticking around a little longer. One more slide. Here is, oops, end of slideshow. There it is, right there. Our next public class is going to be a free one. Mercury retrograde Monday, February 3rd, before it goes retrograde in Pisces Aquarius. And so look for the links in our newsletter to register for that class. And we will see you in a few weeks. And thank you everyone for your interest in our webinar classes. We'll see you next time.
Aho.